I was reading through something the other day, and there's a 19th century Danish philosopher named Soren Kierkegaard. How's that for a beginning?
Right.
That says life can only be understood backwards, but must be lived forwards. I mean,
I mean,
which
which is incredibly and undeniably true.
undeniably true.
It is undeniably true.
And I think during a digital age where it's kind of a call to say, like, take a second, look back, and what's cool in being in a digital age is that we have all these pictures.
We have all of these images.
All these
Yes.
images. And so I want you to kind of introduce yourself, though, and then we'll go from there. I also have things from your own words from back when.
Right.
And then I also had AI tell me about you, too.
Oh,
So
great.
that
Well,
was, yeah,
there's a lot. I'm fascinated at what AI has to say about
it's
me.
actually, I enjoyed it, actually.
Okay.
So, yeah. So how would you, you're on an elevator that's, 90 seconds.
Right.
How do you introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, my name is Kristen Farmer Hall, and I am a self-taught pastry chef that fell in love with French technique through that sort of means, and then I fell in love with France, right? So, over a few years decided I really wanted to sort of bring that French energy that I had experienced over the last few years to a restaurant. So I'm also the executive chef and owner of Fête, which is a French bistro down on Morris Avenue. And so I spend my days making pastries and sort of loving on a restaurant that's teeny tiny but has quite the personality. And I also have two daughters, Emma and Eleanor, so I feel like I'm taking care of a lot of people, but I was telling a friend recently that I also wanted to sort of be Mary Poppins, too. So it's a little bit of all of those things.
All right, here's what you said many years ago. I'm a baker, dreamer, mom, entrepreneur. I'm trying to make my time here on this planet meaningful, to take my joys and sorrows and create places that resonate with people so that they can take their joys and sorrows and find a place for them at the table. It's really lovely and it's really hard work.
I was right. and all of those things are undeniably true,
Love it.
They are that.
What AI says is a lot. And then it says, bottom line, Kristen Hall is more than a pastry chef. She's a storyteller through space and flavor. Her work blends nostalgia, timeless European design with intentional culinary experiences. Bar Lafette stands as a testament to her refusal to cut corners. She's grounded in tradition, yet bold enough to rethink what wine, snacks, and hospitality can look and feel like.
Damn.
That's pretty good for a computer.
You know what? That's pretty good for a computer. Yeah. Okay. Well,
I know a lot of writers that are worse than that,
Right.
and a lot of writers that are better than that.
Right.
But that's a pretty good summary.
Okay, that's actually a pretty
And I also like
well,
that's like it doesn't create things on its own, and it's like it's pulling from all of its things of like what it has been written and what has been said. And I loved the like going through and it says bottom line.
Bottom line.
I was
Right.
like, that's really nice.
Okay, that is really nice.
When did you fall in love with food and hospitality?
Yeah, so I think I fell in love with hospitality at a pretty early age, but I think it took me a really long time to sort of realize what that meant for me. I started my, I guess, sort of like academic career thinking I was going to become a pediatrician or an OBGYN. Obviously, in the medical field, those are the ones that are like, I think sort of a little more intuitive, right? And so I've been thinking a lot about that transition actually for me from sort of medicine into hospitality. But, I think especially those particular fields, it's precision, but it's also intuition at the same time. And so, I think I was raised to, become quote unquote something important, right? Or have a career that like made a lot of money or those sorts of things. And so I think for me that's, and I do love science obviously, and I love chemistry. hence pastry. But I think I fell in love with hospitality at a pretty early age. My first job was in hospitality. So I worked at the Chick-fil-A drive-thru.
Come on now.
Exactly, when I was 15.
My pleasure.
My pleasure, exactly. And so I will say that organization really is very hospitality focused. And so I worked there from 15 to 18 and then went to college. I did an undergrad at Samford. And then I did get my first server job at J. Alexander's. And it's so funny because I think really my training has been in corporate sort of hospitality. And I've been able to sort of I think merge that experience with really with my love of food that I think sort of developed later. My daughters were 2 and 5 when I started my little bandit adventure. And I think for me, sort of creating food, I don't know, there's such a power in it, right? Mm-hmm. And I know you're a father of many as well.
So many.
So many. And, there's something that's really important about teaching our children to care for themselves and to be, and again, there's a power in that. So that's really where it started for me, was creating food as a means to help my daughters sort of feel confident moving into adulthood, right? Eventually they move out of our house. So I hear, I'm not sure yet, but, And so for me, I wanted them to have skills to be able to care for themselves. And especially as women, I think my own personal experiences too, when you feel dependent on someone else, you sort of lose a little bit of your power in that way. And so that's really where food for me actually started, was, hey, let's gather some ingredients and let's make some brownies, right? Let's make some cookies. Let's sort of create sort of some experience in the kitchen. And then, of course, that translated into sharing those ingredients with other people. And I think that's the evolution of it. It really is sharing the ingredients of both life and food with people, right? And I think that's what a restaurant ultimately is. And so obviously it has evolved significantly since baking cookies at my house in Crestwood. But I think the spirit is all the same. And, I think it grew from sort of more southern pastries, which I think, were cookies and cakes and things like that, into more precision, right? Yeah. And for me, once I found lamination, it was sort of it was a big breakthrough for me in terms of food and how food can be made, and the friction really between precision and intuition. And so I think that is ultimately what I do every day. Is I live sort of at the crossroads of that place.
Speaking when you were saying older pictures and stuff,
right.
Just the first shot
right.
ever on your Instagram.
Right. Wow.
So is this the baking cookies in Crestwood?
That is the baking cookies in Crestwood, right? I mean, yeah. And it is. It's you look at these things and as a creative, you're like, oh, that's terrible, right? But it actually isn't terrible, right?
It's not.
It wasn't terrible then, and it isn't terrible now, right? And I'm incredibly nostalgic too, and so I think that I knew when you invited me here that it was going to be, quite an emotional experience too, because that is the very beginning of the journey, and as I think most of us in life, but I literally had no idea what was going to happen to me, and it is beyond. It's harder than I ever imagined, and yet greater than I ever imagined. And who could be sad about that?
Mm-hmm. So going from that, so that was in 2013.
2013.
Yeah, 2013.
Yes.
Shortly after that, you took a trip to San Francisco. I don't know if that was your first trip or not, but you definitely went to Tartine.
I definitely went to Tartine.
Tell me about.
Whoa. Yeah. Gosh. Okay. Thanks, Caleb. Yeah, you got me already. Yeah. Actually, I was on a work trip at UAB
Because you were working there in which specific field were you
So
in?
I was in fundraising and
Okay.
community
Got
relations.
it.
So I worked in the Office of Development at the School of Medicine. So we
even in that, there's community.
I mean,
and
right,
care.
exactly.
I
Like
mean,
it was
come on.
always it was always
there.
community,
Yeah.
right? And I actually, thankfully, I have. I don't know. I've talked a little bit about this with some friends recently, and some guests actually at Fête. But I have this thing where I can remember how I felt in a space, and translate that into other spaces. And so I was talking about Paris at the time, which is, one of the things that I think that I did and continue to do is sort of translate an energy, like an energetic. And Tartine was one of those places, right? I stood in line for a good hour and a half. And again, I was not interested really in sort of like building a bakery or any of those kinds of things, but obviously very interested. And I stood in line for, a really long time. And I got up to the counter and I was just like, I'll take a gougere, right? And that's actually the moment. Okay, so, and they put all these pastries in a paper bag. Right? I don't know if you've ever been to the original Tartine, right? Obviously that brand has evolved a lot, but in this tiny space, and it was rugged, and like there were bakers obviously that had been there for like many hours, and a little intense too, right? There was just like a lot of intensity, and there were two places to order. So you order pastries at a counter, and then I went and got a coffee, and I went and sat outside, and I opened the bag, and I took a bite of this gougere, and I was like, what just happened to me? Like it really was like I had sort of an out-of-body experience a little bit in terms of just, I don't know what happened to me, but I want to be able to do this too. Yeah. And to be honest, gougeres are still like one of my favorite things to make. And I ultimately went home and I was like, I don't even know what this is. And so again, I'm a self-taught baker. And so I was like, okay, well, then I'm going to learn how to make gougeres.
The word that I was so excited when I found it. It's a Japanese word called haikoniwa. It's the idea of the walled garden. And there has to be perimeters to it, but it has to be free enough that people can feel like they can explore but never get lost. And like there's just a beautiful place, like the idea of creating a space where people don't feel like they're abandoned, but they don't feel like they're alone. They don't feel like they're alone, but they don't feel like someone is controlling their every move.
Right.
There's like this freedom, and what a great
Gosh,
anyway.
I love that because ultimately, again, fast forward a lot of years, but like that is the spirit of Fête, right?
Yeah.
Is to create a place where people feel seen and heard, right? And again, if you go back to medicine, that again should be the goal of caring for people, right? And I think ultimately it just boils down to that: people being seen and heard, and creating a space around that. And obviously, I do that in a lot of ways. Since I design the spaces, but it's the way that the wallpaper is chosen, right? It's why the countertops are what they are. It's why the plates are what they are. It's why the food is what it is. And I often tell my team at Fête that success in a restaurant, at least as I translate it and as I intend it, is when a guest or a friend or someone tells me about their experience, I want them to tell me 2 or 3 things before we even talk about food, right? Because restaurants have become so focused on the food itself, right? And that is transactional. Right? And I'm not interested in transactions, right? I'm interested in translations. And when a guest or a friend says, "Oh, like I just love the way that I feel in that space," right? Your team is so kind. I just really love the vibe there. The food was awesome, and it's like that. That is, in fact, success as I define it.
All right, next one.
Oh, my very first logo. had been encouraged to do a pop-up, right? And in the fall of 2013. So obviously my girls and I had been dropping off packages at friends' doorsteps and ringing at the doorbell and running away, which is how, we became known as the Baking Bandits. And I had a friend who said, hey, like we're, a group of people is doing a series of pop-up shops. You really should do one. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I have a full-time job and no. But of course, the requests kept coming. And so I was like, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it well. But I had no money, no, ability to sort of really invest in a new business. But I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to do a pop-up, it has to have a brand, right? Hence this picture right here.
Tell me about your relationship with Pepper Place.
Yes.
And so it was so funny of going back through and the amount of signage. But then the amount of signage right after, because this was before Instagram stories. And so double posts, come on. So
absolutely.
The updates.
Well, yeah. That was the only way to keep. Yes.
And then the next one would inevitably be
sold out.
Exactly.
And lines through all of the things. Exactly. Yes. This is really where Bandit. This is really where Bandit was born as a business, for sure. So, again, did the pop-up shop, and I don't know if we've ever had this conversation before, but translation of time and space and the way that you feel, and did the Rev pop-up shop, and day one goes, and we've spent, of course, all night setting up this thing, and the entire time I'm like, this is the dumbest thing that I have ever done, right? Why have I done this? But I unlocked the door to the space that I was using, and it was the metal doors, and the way that a metal door clicks open like an old school lock, and it was just, it rang so deep, into my bones, just unlocking the thing. And I just didn't know at the time, of course, again, as we look back on these things, I was literally unlocking my future, right? The sound of that lock, it just has been embedded in my bones ever since. And so I unlocked the door, and, it was kind of slow at first on that first day. And then the next day there were 10 people in line. And then the next day there were 20 people in line. And I was like, I don't know what is happening to me. And then ultimately, looking back, that's when Pastry chose me, right? And so this is me choosing Pastry. So again, Pepper Place Farmers Market is a huge gift to our community, right? And it, especially at that time, it gave people like me, really a start in a way that you really can't have anymore, or there's just different ways. So so I worked Monday to Friday at UAB, and then I would go home and I would bake all night long, literally just pull an all-nighter, go to the farmer's market, set up at 6, sell out, pack everything back up in my car, drive home, and then go what just happened to me. And I did that over and over and over again every Saturday.
And it's still going.
And it is still going. Bandit is in its 13th year at the farmer's market.
Yep. That's just incredible. Tell me a little bit about this space.
Oh, yeah, that place. So this space ultimately became known as Feast and Forest, and it was sort of co-branded with Baking Bandits, but this was the first venture that I had with Victor King. He and I had met really earlier that year, and he was a chef and a butcher, and I was a baker, and ultimately I think had sort of a similar interests in terms of opening sort of an adventure, and adventure it was.
This used to be my old studio with
Jason Wallace.
Technically, it's Jason's studio, and
right.
I was just up in a loft.
Right. Yeah.
I remember this era as just this was one of the places to be. This was it was so tiny. It was so tiny.
So tiny. Yep. So incredibly tiny. And on, again, this is the ultimate, I love this so much. Strawberry Fields Forever. People talk to me every day about Feast and Forest, right? And I just, we had really no idea what was happening. And the intention was like, it was a small space because I thought it was going to be small, right? And Birmingham had really never seen this, I guess, right? Because it exploded, right? And I will never forget walking out into the dining room. It was on a Sunday brunch. We had just launched brunch, not that long after that, and there were like people like physically altercating for a seat outside. And I walked back into the kitchen and I was like, I don't know what is happening right now. And then, you just look outside and there are like people just there's like 50 people in a line on 24th Street. And I was like, something is happening to me, right? Something is happening to us. And again, when you're in it, you can't really see that. But yeah, this was like, apparently it was the place to be.
It was.
Right?
It absolutely was.
Baby girls.
Baby girls.
Baby girls.
I talked to had another chef friend who they were about to have a baby, and they were just like, how are we going to do restaurant life and parenting at the same time? And it was, when I started having kids, I was traveling all the time. I was doing all these things, and it was just like, how are you going to be a dad during all this? And it was a realization too. It's not that, you want to spend time with them, things like that, but there is also like those kids are coming into a life that's been going. And it's, if you're trying to say, well, I have to do the thing that you're supposed to do for your kids, you're going to feel like you're failing them.
Right.
Of like, I'm not giving them the normal life. And I was telling my friend who was asking how are we going to do this at a restaurant? I was like, your kids get to grow up in a restaurant.
Right.
Your kids get to grow up with their parents doing a thing that not everybody does in this way. Like lean in as much as you can with that. Have you found that to be true? And what have been we don't have to get into the hardships of it and things, but just like they have a unique mom that is doing this work. And so how have you seen that as a parent?
Yeah, that obviously has been that's a very hard piece of it, right? But I think that this brings up this really interesting conversation that I had with Emma, who is my oldest, and she's on the spectrum, and having a special needs daughter is very challenging, but also again very unique, right? And she asked me, I don't know, a couple of days ago, and I don't really necessarily talk about work a lot at home. My goal is, somebody asked me to this week. I was making a gâteau breton at Fête, and I had peeled a bunch of Chilton County peaches and was making this peach compote in the back of house at Fête. And the servers were obviously service was going on, and but somebody asked me if this is what my house smelled like. And I just got the giggles a little bit because I was like, no, this is the opposite of my house, right? I was like, no, I live in a mid-century modern A-frame hidden in the woods, right? And all the walls are painted white. And it was funny because I do think that I have tried to, unlike a lot of restaurant families, I do feel like, if this had been a family business in terms of I got a divorce right actually about 30 days after Feast and Forest opened. Mm-hmm. So there was just also a lot of personal transition, and I do think that if the girl's dad and I had a restaurant together, then yeah, it would have been we're going to pick you up from school and you're going to come to the restaurant. So it's an interesting dynamic because they know a lot about the restaurant, obviously, but in a strange way I've tried to sort of keep it, this is a funny statement to make, but an office job. Mm-hmm. And in terms of okay, well, mom was at work and mom is now home. But Emma asked me a couple days ago if I was famous, and it was just an interesting, it really caught me off guard, because that was a really strange question to answer for her. And I said, well, Emma, yeah, I guess so, a little bit. And it was just again, we've been on this journey together for a really long time, and it's like, what does that even mean, right? Yeah, like, what does that even mean? But I think, and I think I still struggle with this too, is like even up to this point, right? Like, I was unaware of the impact that I was having. That one got me. I was unaware. And it's been really great, but it's been a lot. It's been a lot. And it's like so fun to like, it's so fun to like be on this side of things and know that like I've grown into my ability to have impact. Mm-hmm. Like before it was like a thing that that I couldn't control. Mm-hmm. Right? And it felt like it was controlling me. And I think that's true. You know, I mean, I think that when you set out on a journey, right, you don't really know where it's going to take you. And it's like there's so much a part of you, like me, that like really wanted to have an impact, right? Mm. And then I was impacted, right? And then this question of like, and obviously Emma hasn't asked me this before, but other people have talked about it, was like, yeah, are you famous? And how cool that is. And it's like, kind of, mm-hmm. you know? And I think that it's really cool when you can have an impact on people. And I think this year at Fête has been like the ultimate ability for me to sit at that tension, right? Of but when you are having an impact, that means everything that you do is watched. Mm-hmm. You know, my girls and my house have been sort of a respite for me, just sort of knowing that like I can go home and hide there in a way. But as you know, as a parent, there's also no hiding. So like,
yep.
So yeah, it's a little bit of all of it.
It's there's the visual of basically all of our decisions are these little stones that we're throwing into a pond, and the ripples go out, and you have no idea how far it goes. And you have if you take the same action but elevate it, the ripples go farther. Like the thing doesn't have to get bigger; it's just from a higher elevation, mm-hmm. and it's just I want to talk a little bit about Fête.
Hi.
And I also want to talk, you can kind of talk about it in light of Fête in general, but also the Morris location, because you've had the Morris location longer than Fête, and then it switched. And
True
so,
story,
but like,
yes.
I love Fête on Morris now. And so,
Same. But I didn't really grow up traveling. And so, when I started this adventure, really like, honestly choosing myself. Okay. So, without going into too many details, me choosing pastry was in fact choosing myself. And I had never chosen myself before. Never, not one time. And, you know, obviously looking back, you can see I can see all of the ways that I chose, the choices that I made were for others, right? And so when I chose pastry, it was the very first time that I'd ever chosen myself, which was terrifying, of course, because that is an adventure that I had never known. And so part of me choosing myself was to expose myself to traveling. And what is an interesting dynamic, which no one really knew about, was I had an insane amount of anxiety, like earth-shattering anxiety to sort of break out of the known, right? And traveling was a big part of that, because I was like, I don't even know if I can travel. Like, can I physically get on a plane and go somewhere else, right? And the answer is yes, you can. And thankfully, I was able to sort of like work through a lot of those details. And you know, it was one of those things that like do it afraid. Right. And I really think that the last 10 years, my memoir of the last 10 years is Do It Afraid. And so we opened on First Avenue, and I think what Fête on Morris is now was the goal, was to to create a space that was so warm and so welcoming and so kind of weird, and like just creating a place that was both beautiful and home and all of those things. And I think that just the spirit of La Fête too. I don't, most people don't know this, but like I believe that projects name themselves. And so again, in that tension of trying to figure out an answer, I stopped trying to figure out an answer, right? So I mean, and I know you know this, like when we're trying to like find a brand or create a word that means the thing, it can be so frustrating, right? Because you're just like, it's right there, but it's not there, right? And I, over time, have realized, again, intuition, that they will just name themselves, okay? And something will happen to me at some point. The universe will give me the answer, and I don't have to look for it. And again, a long time coming, but La Fête was the same way. So Victor and I had wanted to open this project. We had gone to France a few times. Still, it didn't have a name, right? It just didn't have a name. And one day I was standing at the corner of the bar at the Essential on Morris, and we had just somebody had brought in a sparkling rosé, and the name on the bottle was Faire La Fête. And I was like, oh. And so like, well, what does that mean? Turns out like that was the spirit of what it is. It's a party, right? It's a celebration. And turns out I have learned recently that the word fête is both a noun and a verb. Right? That. So you can fête someone.
Oh, I
right?
love this.
Like and again, I learned this when I was writing a caption on Instagram. About I've tried to sort of utilize Instagram and social media as a little bit more of the inner workings of the restaurant, which ended up becoming the inspiration for a chef de cuisine series that I've also started. It is like how words just matter so much, right? But yes, so Faire La Fête. But yes, apparently you can fête someone. And you can have a fête.
It's like a barbecue where you eat barbecue at a barbecue from a barbecue.
From a barbecue, right?
It's like,
you can like,
I'm going to a fête and I will be fêted.
I will be fêted, and you can fête someone, and I will be fêting. And I was like, ooh, actually, like that is yes and amen to a word that is both a noun and a verb.
I love that. Tell me about Wellington Wednesdays.
Well, and so all kinds of reasons to have started this, but for me, the juxtaposition of savory and pastry is one that I find really beautiful and magical. And obviously layers are one of the kind of layers are my muse, I suppose, and that is the ultimate savory layer. So, Diego and I wanted to do Wellington Wednesdays to combine sort of like his gifts and talents, my gifts and talents and experience. He also loves pastry. And so it was just like the ultimate translation of the things that we love. And again, when you do things, you don't know how they're going to be received or perceived. And it turns out this was just in the spirit of La Fête, right? And for me as a business owner, it was like, okay, well, is there a way for me to bring more business to Wednesdays, right? But it's kind of funny because that ended up being like the 50th thought, which is now I just do what I want to do, okay? Like we just make the food that we want to make, and not in like an egotistical, like, well, we're going to make this, and if you don't like it, we don't care. I care a lot, right? It is like the thing that I care the most about. But it's like, this is like a thing that we literally love, right? And that brings us joy in making. And it turns out that gets translated to another person. And so Wellington Wednesdays just have become a thing. And again, it is an interesting and beautiful and like delicious thing. But again, it's just taken on like a fête of its own.
There's you've mentioned this a couple times of just the idea of like following your instinct towards things, and that kind of war of like there's other voices saying don't do that. And there's a great Adam Savage quote where he says that people who are talking about something that they are interested in they are intrinsically interesting to watch when they are talking about something
Right.
that they love. And there was a minister that was talking about, like, say the weird example, say the thing that actually connects with you. Don't try to find something that this will connect with everyone. It's like, no, what connects with you? And say that, because it will connect with another person. And it's not that what you're saying, it's not this like arrogance, I'm going to say whatever I want. It's like, no, I deeply care about people. I deeply know that I'm meant to do something that connects with them. This is what connects with me. Does it connect with y'all too?
Right.
And so many times you get,
yes. And here's the great thing about this. There is a magnetism and a magnetic energy that comes with that. And what happens is that when it isn't driven by ego, right? It's driven by like, I intrinsically enjoy this. It turns out that you are now magnetizing your business and yourself to other people that are magnetized to this energy. And really it maybe took 3-4 months. One of my front of house manager, James, and Diego and I were sitting down just kind of like reflecting over the past few months. And it was like, when you look around now, it's not every single person, but like the vast majority of people are there, and you're like, oh, you see what I see. Mm-hmm. You love what I love. Mm-hmm. And that is like, again, that there's so much fear in that, right? Because it's like, well, what if they don't love me? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, what if I do this thing and that doesn't translate? But I think inherently when you are aligned with the thing you're supposed to be doing, then like, you're aligned. And then the people, it's like the tug of war kind of stops. And I think that has been like that has been the journey of this particular year for me, is to see what happens when the tug of war stops. Right. And turns out it's very beautiful. Right. Like, I love it. I mean, that's really, it is incredibly beautiful when the tug of war stops, right? And it's not that the voices necessarily stop, but they kind of do, because you just decide you're going to say the weird thing, right? And it's going to connect with those people. And then the more you say the thing that you wanted to say, the more people you're going to connect with that actually resonate with you. Mm-hmm. And then there's going to be like, and it's not so much that you drown out the other voices, it's just that all of those people are magnetized and in volume, right? Mm-hmm. And then you end up having like the busiest services you've ever had, right? But it wasn't calculated. Mm-hmm. It wasn't margins. It wasn't cogs and whatever. It was love. It was beauty. It was finally deciding to choose yourself and hoping that someone would choose you, right? And there is nothing in this entire world that could take that away from me.
I think that's a good end.
Thanks.
Right on.
Right on.
Well, I love it. All right, we can start recording.
Now I can start crying again. Oh, God.